I'm Nolan Beilstein, and welcome to another episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing, a podcast where I talk to young people about their journeys in manufacturing, how they intend to influence the industry, and what they are looking for from an employer. For this episode, I welcome Hannah Dannecker, a 26-year-old managing partner at Better Together Group, a collection of companies that focus on supplying support and tools to staffing companies. Additionally, Dannecker serves as a board member for the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada. Dannecker is also a public speaker that discusses how to recruit and retain the next generation of employees. She specializes in the transportation sector and plans to incorporate the manufacturing industry into her work while helping close the gender gap in traditionally male-dominated industries. Before we hear from Dannecker, please make sure to like and share this episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing. To view previous episodes, visit manufacturing.net. If you are a member of Gen Z and would like to discuss your experience in the manufacturing industry, please get in touch with me, Nolan Beilstein, at nolan@ien.com. All right, Hannah, well, thanks for joining Gen Z in Manufacturing. To open up, I wanted to ask how you got into the trucking space and what recently pulled you towards manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into trucking because I was born into it. I tell people that I teethed on the industry from the time that I was really little. My grandpa was a truck driver, my uncle, and then my father started a transportation agency where we helped place drivers. And our whole concept was just revolutionizing the way that people saw the industry because it has not always had the best uh, general understanding from the public. And so that was kind of how that started and how I got into transportation. And then I joined the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada board about a year ago right now, and have been very excited about that. But more than that, really opened up my eyes to just how many industries are out there that have so much value that the next generation of people just doesn't know anything about. And manufacturing fell into that category of just something that they don't really understand or know and has so much value. And so I was pretty passionate about helping them find that spot.
So as you speak to older generations, what is one thing that always surprises them about Gen Z?
Yeah, I could talk about that forever. But the one thing that I think has stood out the most in the last little while through some of these presentations that I give about recruiting the next gen has been that managers will often say to me, like, Gen Z has this wall. I just can't get them to take this wall down. It's really hard. They come in, their ability to be influenced is pretty minimal. And typically, what I talk about there is how millennials, as I understand them, I'm not one, but as I understand them, had the ability to create what I would deem like a net. They came into the working world where they still had the opportunity to make critical decisions for themselves based on the information that was in front of them. Whereas Gen Z has come into the working world and basically just life, where so many opinions and so many leaders and so many thought leaders are out there with so many different things going on, that they're being influenced from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep every single day. And so as a generation, rather than being able to take that information, absorb it, understand it for what it means to them, and then send it back, they just kind of reject a lot of stuff up front until they have a true connection and trust with the people that are delivering it to them. And I think that that's kind of one of the biggest things that managers are like, wait, what do you mean? They don't want to immediately listen to everything I have to say because I'm their manager. I'm like, no, it's crazy, but they don't. And so I think that that's kind of the one that shakes most people.
I think an experience that I've had talking to Gen Z people, it seems that a why is necessary when you're explaining how it's supposed to go. Do you find the same thing in your experience?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah, that is one of the very last things I tell people as I go through the presentation is that we need to help them understand why they are doing what they're doing. And because I come from a staffing perspective, I have perhaps a little geeky of a perspective around this. I think that every single job is really cool. I'm like, you know what? If you're making pens and someone is writing a check, that is the check of someone's life that they could be taking home. Maybe it's a letter that they're sending to a different place, or a letter that they're writing to pass to the, like, after they leave this earth to the next generation. And so I always have something that I'm like, no, every job is really cool and every opportunity is really cool. And if you take a big step back from whatever you're doing, you can find a really incredible why behind the most simple of jobs, no matter what they are. And that's really important to them. You need to do this, but that's the two pieces. You need to do this, A, because we need this many units done so that we can support our customers, so that we can pay our bills. And it has to be that kind of internal, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it around your KPIs. But then you also need them to be connected to the message of what you're doing as a company and what you're trying to move forward in the community, I think.
You mentioned that you've noticed young people experiencing more anxiety, depression, loneliness than older generations. Just explain to some older hiring managers, older executives, what emotional labor does Gen Z carry into work every day?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I would say everything. Everything they're experiencing at home, they're carrying through into the doors that they're walking into your building. That was an awkward sentence, but no matter what they're experiencing, wherever it is, I don't think that anybody truly has the ability to separate work from home. I think that no matter what, the thoughts you're having will continue to dominate a thought pattern and a thought process, no matter the seat you're sitting in or where you're going. And while I think that other generations before us, I think that millennials kind of started to break this trend, but boomers, Gen X, their ability to turn that off or at least ignore it was significantly higher, and ours is not.
Why is that? Where's the filter? Where did that go?
I think that it has to do with a couple of things. I think that part of it is technology and part of it was COVID. I think that because of technology, all of those lines have been crossed everywhere. Because of COVID and the way that we all got sent to work from home, that home and work life kind of collided. And then because of technology, the availability and the access is always there. So even if your Gen Z comes in and does the very best that they can do to completely stop thinking about something, they then get a 30-minute lunch break and they can pick up their phone and see 100 notifications about that very thing that they've been trying to ignore, and then get completely whirlwinded back into the same thought pattern that they had originally. And so, yeah, access, availability, and then that workplace, work life collide, I think.
So, what do those challenges look like in the workplace? And then what can employers do to spot the signs of that happening?
Yeah, I think there's two things. A, is it different than what you typically experience with this Gen Z? So you can compare their productivity day over day, week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, depending on how long you've had them. And if it's really dipped, you can start conversations and ask questions and try and figure out what's going on. And that's a really, really easy place to start thinking and looking, and then just being aware. I think trying to be in relationship with your employees rather than just managing them. Something else I talk about, I want you to mentor the next gen over manage them. It'll hit a lot better for them. But through that, you create good relationships with them. And ideally, they have the ability to come to you and say, hey, this is what's going on, or I just need an hour to pull myself back together, or whatever that be, but that you kind of create the space for it to come forward itself.
You mentioned earlier that Gen Z is more guarded than older workers, and we kind of talked about where that comes from a little bit. But how does that get broken? How do the walls come down? How can employers expedite that process?
Absolutely. I think through trust is really what it comes back to. I think that for a really long time, they've been working on creating that steady, firm arm that goes out and says, I'm not going to let you touch or affect me or influence me or in any way until I can truly trust you. And so I think that comes the way that anybody creates trust. It's a combination of time and shared experiences and follow through, I think.
In the presentation you sent me, you discussed imposter syndrome. Can you briefly explain what that means for those who aren't familiar?
Yes, absolutely. So 70% of people experience imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is basically the little voice that comes into your brain and tells you you aren't good enough, or this isn't for you, or you are pretending and this shouldn't be your opportunity. And then feeling like you can't take that next step, I think would be the way I'd describe that.
Do you think Gen Z is the first generation to really feel this, or has that always been present throughout every generation and now it just has a name?
Yeah. I think that they are most certainly not the most, or not the first generation to experience it. It's 70% of humans, so not even just Gen Z, but humans experience this feeling or this emotion. I don't know about you. Sometimes I experience it regularly. I'll do something or get something or book something, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what on the planet? But I think that the next generation, unfortunately, really wasn't supposed to experience this. They were supposed to have the information, normally through tech, or the experiences. They were able to, pardon me, where they were supposed to be able to say, I've got this info. I know this is true. I know this is correct. And I've got the proof from it. But I think that because of the way that COVID happened, as they were escalating into their adulthood, their ability to lean into those experiences was diminished. So now all they have is information, which isn't enough to help you overcome that, at least in my opinion. But no, I think it's an everybody problem.
Is imposter syndrome in Gen Z specifically linked to how they were raised or how society is structured? What do you think?
I think it really comes back to COVID, just kind of how I had mentioned that they were hoping to get all these experiences. They were set up to have fantastic internships and, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Co-op experiences. But some of those really fundamental things just didn't happen because the world was closed for a couple years.
What are some ways that employers might unknowingly or unintentionally reinforce the feelings of inadequacy?
That is such a good question. I think that often we will give employees something to do, and even more often, full autonomy to do it. And then often, what will happen is that project will come back to the manager or the employer, and they'll say, no, that's not it. And giving specific, short instructions about how it can be fixed reinforces your trust in them. But completely taking the project and changing it yourself reinforces the concept that they wouldn't be enough, I think. And I think that people do that very regularly, unfortunately. Perfection's not necessary, but continuing the ball down the court really is. So I think that might be a big one.
Do you have any examples you can share of peers you know or people you've helped with
Yeah.
get jobs in certain spots that like these kind of, I don't want to say like a trauma or nightmare story, but just like something like that, a similar situation?
Yes, it's hopefully not a trauma situation, but I had one this morning I can share with you right now. So I have a new marketing intern who's starting. She's sitting right across from me. I can see her at this moment. And we were doing a project together. I had given her some stuff to do and passed it off, and she was crushing it, absolutely crushing it. And then she gave me back some verbiage of what she wanted to post on something. And I was like, great. And we're going to completely change it. And I had to catch myself in that moment. I really wanted to take the whole thing from her and just be like, I'm just going to write it for you. But she actually, while I was busy doing something else, wrote the whole thing and was like, it's fine, just change whatever you need. And so she reinforced my own opinion that when you give it to them, let them do it. And I mean, I can say it and live it and be reminded of it every single day because it's hard.
And it can be kind of a lonely feeling if you're just constantly being corrected and not being trusted. So going back to the loneliness topic we had, what does belonging mean to Gen Z, and how is that different than what older workers might have looked for when they were starting out?
Hmm. That's a fantastic question. Belonging within the company, you mean? How do they find
Yes.
the
Yeah,
culture as home?
their community within their job, their culture. At what point, or what does belonging look like to them? Yeah.
I think that belonging to them looks like comfort, looks like feeling like they can show up as themselves, no matter who that is, and come every single day as their authentic self, rather than, I think oftentimes as younger employees are graduating into the workforce, they feel like they have to put on a front because they have to be really professional or they have to show face in whatever industry they're stepping into. And I think that that does them a really big disservice, to be super honest. People talk a lot about, I want to be a mirror when I come in. I just want to give them what I'm getting. I want to try and do what I think is what they want. But if you show up every single day with a mask or trying to put yourself in a situation that's not authentic to you, it's exhausting. And so, if you can create a space where they can come and be themselves and feel comfortable and work on those professional skills and continue to escalate that, but in a way that's true to them, I think that that will create a culture that will really last and make them feel like they're at home.
What would be an appropriate way for the manufacturing industry to tackle the impending labor shortage and filling it with young talent?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that most industries and manufacturing alike, this is not to single everybody out in this, but I think that's something that we often do is we try to talk to people when we can bring them in, when they can start working for us, when they are employable. And what I talk about in transportation is when they are insurable. But for us, it's the same kind of concept. When can we finally have them on the floor is when we start trying to talk to them. And then every once in a while, we'll talk to university students, or we'll talk to college students, or we'll talk to high school students. But what I'm trying to help people understand is that children are asked for the very first time what they want to do when they grow up at the age of 4. What did you want to do when you were 4?
Me? Oh, goodness.
Yes.
I think, my goodness. There might have been movie acting at some point was an aspiration that quickly was weeded out. But
Okay, I love that.
didn't first seriously thinking about careers until maybe like 7th, 8th grade.
7th or 8th grade. Okay, that's you're helping me prove my point. I love this. So kids, 4-year-olds, they only know what they know, right? They only know what's right in front of them. So movie actor, influencer, a lot of them want to be athletes, which is fantastic. But the reality is not everybody can do that. And there are so many amazing jobs out there. So what happens is when they're 4, these crazy ideas start to turn into dreams. And then when they're 6, they start to turn into goals. And then when they're 8, they kind of turn into plans. And by the 10, they're starting to make decisions and think about what those plans would require for them and how they can move forward. Then by the time that they're 13 in 8th grade, they're choosing the classes that they'll take in high school, which affect the classes they can take in their second half of high school, which affects what postgrad they can apply to, college, university, anything else, and ultimately will help determine what they'll do for their career for the rest of their life. And so, as insane as it is to say we need to start talking to the 4-year-olds where they're at, when they're starting to have these dreams, that is where you have the opportunity to influence the next generation while you still have the wheel yourself. And so I have a book that I created about transportation that's teaching kids all about trucking, but I'm working right now on one about manufacturing. And I am so excited to start getting it out there because everything needs to be made. Everything. And so we got to get more people moving in that direction. And I think that it would be really good. But this was the first one that we created. So it's just a kid's cartoon, and it kind of goes through in a picture form what it means to be a truck driver. And then you kind of start to see a little journey, and you get to see him pick up all of her favorite things and what that looks like. But let's see if I can find it easily enough. In the background of the very first one, we have a plant. And the mom is going to be a plant manager. And so we'll see how it all comes out. But yeah, gotta start bringing them in somehow and giving them the information that they can use today to help them make decisions for their future selves.
Thank you for watching this episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing. Please make sure to like and share the episode. To view previous episodes, visit manufacturing.net. If you are a member of Gen Z and would like to discuss your experience in the manufacturing industry, please contact Nolan Beilstein at nolan@ien.com.